Hey everyone, Richard Metalfan here, bringing you guys a new 2016 album review. And today we're going to be looking into a new album that I've been looking forward to for a while now. And as you can see below the title, we're going to be looking into the new album from Meshuggah entitled The Violent Sleep of Reason, which came out today through Nuclear Blast Records. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Meshuggah, they're a progressive death metal, extreme metal, whatever you want to classify them as, from Sweden that formed in 1987. And hardly they've been around for nearly 30 years. I mean, Meshuggahs are basically known for like their odd time signatures, polyrhythms, and just heavy downtuned guitars. Then, like some metal fans even consider them to be the inventors of the metal subgenre known as gent, which the band themselves even don't even consider them to can't even speak today. Can't even don't even consider them to have invented that style known as gent. But you hear bands nowadays like after the Burial, Periphery, bands like them using the same style of riffs that they use, but nobody pulls it off better than Meshuggah. I mean, they just do it just wow better. I guess I don't know. And this new album, The Violent Sleep of Reason, is the follow-up to 2012's Kolos, which I honestly thought that was a pretty good album. But the question to ask, does this album even top Kolos or even fall in the same lines it is? In my honest opinion, I think it definitely has. I think this is their best album since probably Chaos Sphere, which is, I mean, this new album is just so heavy. What can I say? I mean, then again, that's pretty much Meshuggah's music in a nutshell. I mean, the one thing I know about is the vocal work from Jens Kidman. I mean, he just sounds just so aggressive. Like his vocals are just insanely just aggressive. Like I don't even know how he does the type of vocals he does. It's just wow. I mean, guitar wise, I mean, it sounds like very typical Meshuggah. I mean, it's just very crunchy, very heavy. It's pretty good in the mix. The bass playing is pretty audible on this album, as like with other Meshuggah albums. I mean, Meshuggah's music is basically kind of sounds a little bit bassy. See, you can definitely hear it a lot more, especially with the guitars. It basically goes along good. The drumming wise, I mean, what can I say about Thomas Hake that nobody else has ever said? I mean, his drums are just so good. I mean, he doesn't let up on this album. I mean, I don't even know how he does that, but does what he does, but damn, he's really good. But yeah, without further ado, let's dive into this track by track. Now the album opens up with Clockworks, which is a pretty good way to start off this album. It opens up with Ferocity, just some really great polyrhythms in this song, and just some very intricate riffs. It's just very crunchy, very heavy, and honestly think this is a great way to start off this album. Start it off with just like that. And then we get to Born in Dissonance, which is one of the first singles off this album, if I'm not mistaken. Has some very typical Meshuggah riffs, but then it gets attention because of like the intricacy with sort of like the deep tones and the textures in this song. I think it's a good first song to release to get people's attention that Meshuggah are back after not releasing any music since 2012, and it's a really good song. One of my favorites on this album. Then we get to Monstrosity. City, which is like kind of spelled differently. It's like Monstro and City with City. And this song itself has a bit of a catchy groove and it's a kind of a little bit softer, but it has some really good finer harmonies, some really good textures, and a little bit of an ambience to it. It's a really good and interesting song, if I do say so myself. By the Ton, which honestly it starts off with a very catchy and eerie type intro, and then it just goes into like some more complex rhythms in there. It's pretty much a complex song in general. I like this song. Then we get to one of the best songs on this album, and pretty much, which is The Violent Sleep of Reason, the title track, which just begins with some hectic tumult. And this song doesn't let up. It's just monstrous rhythms, and just the riffs in the song are pretty fucking good. And it's just pretty much one of the most heaviest song on this album. I think this could be tied with this and the next song we're going to get into, Ivory Tower, where it's just packed with some really groovy arrangements. And this is really like the musicianship on this song is pretty good. And then we get to next two tracks I would like to talk about, Stifled and Nostrum, which is just some very two intense tracks, which has a little bit of ambience to it. I mean, I like Stifled a little bit, mainly because of the closing part to it. And Nostrum has just one of the pretty much the darkest song on this album. It's just almost has a little bit of a black metal feel to it. It's just very dark and frenetic. It's another good song. And Nostrum is also the first preview of the album to get people's attention. And then we get to Our Rage Won't Die. Another good song. I mean, I don't really have much to say about that, honestly. I mean, it's good, but yeah. But then we get to the closing track of the album, Into Decay, which is kind of a slower paced song. It pretty much sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a pretty interesting way to end this album. I'm just kind of like, I don't even know what to say. But overall, The Violent Sleep of Reason by Meshuggah, it's a pretty good album. One of my most anticipated albums of 2016. If I were to give this album a score, I'd probably give this like a solid 9 out of 10. And if you haven't listened to this album yet, I highly recommend you go do so. This is an album you cannot not go without listening to. So yep, that's my review of the new Meshuggah, guys. Let me know what you guys think of it. I'll see you on the next video, and keep it metal.